While you can't win your league during your fantasy football drafts, you can certainly make enough mistakes to end up screwing your team over. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my must-draft early round players. So we're going to be talking about players from the first, second, third, and fourth round of your guys' fantasy football drafts based upon current ADP and the 10 guys that I want to be targeting in those rounds. Before we can get on into things, though, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you karate kick that like button, smash that like button like it owes you money. Make sure to follow me on Twitter or X if you don't already, at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my must-draft early round players for 2023. Fantasy football. We begin with my first must-draft early round player, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins. Composite ADP from ESPN, NFL, RT Sports, and Sleeper. Wide receiver 4 at pick number 7. Last season in Miami, he was the wide receiver 2 in PPR and the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game, playing in every single game, 17 games played, 170 targets, 10 per game, ranking 3rd, 119 receptions, 7 per game, ranking 2nd, 1,710 receiving yards, 100.6 per game, number 2, and 9 total touchdowns, number 4 at wide receiver. A lot of people were nervous to draft Tyreek Hill last season because he was going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa. Well, obviously, Tyreek Hill has his best season ever last season with Tua Tagovailoa, and I think he has the upside to do even better. If Tua Tagovailoa is able to stay healthy for a majority of the 2023 NFL season, I believe Tyreek Hill could touch the sky and be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. This is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, the second year of the Mike McDaniel system, and Tyreek himself has admitted that last year he didn't even have the strongest grasp of the playbook. So imagine how good Tyreek Hill is going to be when he actually understands the playbook. Last year, 3rd in route win rate, 6th in yards per target, and 2nd in true catch rate. Again, if Tua Tagovailoa is able to stay healthy, it wouldn't shock me at all if Tyreek Hill finishes the wide receiver 1 and eclipsed over 2,000 receiving yards. I think it's kind of funny right now that people are taking Travis Kelce and Austin Eckler ahead of Tyreek Hill. Again, I really think Tyreek Hill next season, if he plays as good as I think he could, he might be in consideration to be the number 1 overall pick next season in fantasy drafts. Moving to my number 2 must-draft early round player, Bijan Robinson, running back of the Atlanta Falcons. Composite ADP running back 4 at pick number 9. It is hilarious that there are 3 running backs ranked higher than Bijan. I have Bijan ranked as my running back number 3, but you could make an argument that you should rank him ahead of both Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. He played 3 seasons at Texas from 2020 to 2022 and racked up back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 1,000-yard seasons. Last year in 12 games at Texas, 258 rushing attempts, 1,580 rushing yards, 19 receptions for 314 receiving yards, and 20 total touchdowns. The Atlanta Falcons pay a pretty penny to select Bijan Robinson, right? They drafted him with a high NFL draft pick. This is a team that last year under Arthur Smith wanted to run the ball at all costs. Didn't matter if they were down bad, getting the shit beat out of them in a game, they were going to run the ball with Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley. I've made this joke a ton, but this offense made Caleb Huntley look like the second coming of Bo Jackson. So you better believe when you draft a running back as highly as Bijan Robinson and with a team that runs the ball as much with subpar talent, they are going to force feed this man the rock. I know his receiving stats in college aren't necessarily the best, but if you watch the training camp clips, you watch what we've seen out of preseason, Bijan Robinson is a guy that can catch 60-plus balls this season. Everyone and their mom talks up Bijan Robinson. Everyone's getting down on their knees, giving him the gawk 9,000, but ultimately, I believe Bijan Robinson deserves it. I believe Bijan, another guy that has the upside to be the number 1 pick in fantasy football drafts next season, or at least the number 1 running back off of the board. This guy might have one of the best running back seasons ever. I genuinely believe heavily in the talent, and I believe that the system Atlanta Falcons that they run heavily will benefit Bijan Robinson. Moving to my third early round must draft player, we got Davante Adams, wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders. Composite ADP wide receiver 7 at pick number 12. Great to see as a Davante Adams stan all offseason long that his ADP continues to rise and rise again like your cock after you eat a gas station pill. So wide receiver 3 last year in PPR, wide receiver 6 in PPR points per game. But people are still nervous to draft Davante Adams because, Nick, don't you know that Davante Adams' quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, I do know that, Carl Weezer, because even with Jimmy Garoppolo, we are going to see Davante Adams go deep into the metaphorical butthole of defenses. Davante Adams was dominating 50 Shades of Grey style with Derek Carr under center last season. And then they even shifted off of Derek Carr to an even worse quarterback, and Davante Adams was still stunting on these defenses. 2nd in targets, 7th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, 1st in total touchdowns, 180 targets, 100 receptions, over 1,500 receiving yards, 14 total touchdowns. Again, the quarterback play seems like people are blowing it out of proportion. Last year, he had the 69th best target accuracy at wide receiver. Very nice, I like, but in reality, we don't like that. Do you really think that with Jimmy Garoppolo under center, that number is going to plummet even further, like he's going to be 100th best in target accuracy? No, I understand that Jimmy Garoppolo's a punching bag in the NFL, and rightfully so, right? He used all of his video game points on looks, didn't use a lot in terms of being the best quarterback in the National Football League. But at the end of the day, Jimmy Pornstar is good enough to throw the ball in the vicinity of Davante Adams. We saw Jarrett Stidham get the ball close to Davante Adams last year, so you better believe with Jimmy Guap, Jimmy G-Spot, Jimmy Garoppolo, Davante Adams going to be just fine. 2nd in dominator rating last year, 5th in total route wins. Again, this Raiders team might not be the best, but at the end of the day, Davante Adams is still going to strike back and have another tremendous season. Wide receiver 7 off the board is hilarious. In some drafts, you see him fall all the way until the middle of the 2nd round. And if you get him in the middle of the 2nd round, you might as well have just gotten the check from your commissioner because you won your fantasy football league. Obviously, you don't win your league in your draft, but that would be a huge solid. I'm comfortable taking him at the end of the 1st round. Moving into my 4th must-draft early round player, another guy that's ADP continues to rise, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, my guy, running back of the Cleveland Browns, composite ADP running back 5 at pick number 13. Last year, the Cleveland Browns offense started off very good. You know, surprisingly, Jacoby Brissett wasn't a flaming pile of dog shit. As a Dolphins quarterback, watching Jacoby Brissett was like watching a loved one get stabbed to death in front of you, right? But in Cleveland, he was actually good. And then once Deshaun Watson took over, it was like a car crash, right? Everything was actually going pretty well, and then the car flies off the edge of a cliff like cartoon style and spins like 1,000 times, right? But this year, I actually think Deshaun Watson's going to be better, and I don't think it takes Deshaun Watson going back to his former glory as a potential MVP in the NFL, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, for Nick Chubb to succeed. As long as Deshaun Watson isn't absolutely atrocious, then we are going to see Nick Chubb succeed. Last year, RB6 in PPR, 7 in PPR points per game, 17 games played. He was 3rd in carries with over 300, 3rd in rushing yards with over 1,500. His problem last year was in the receiving game. He had 37 targets, 31st, 27 receptions, 33rd, and 239 receiving yards, 24th. He made up with it with a bunch of touchdowns, 13 total touchdowns, 3rd at running back. He was 9th in true yards per carry, which is incredibly great for him. It's very impressive because a lot of the time when running backs see as many carries as a guy like Nick Chubb, right, 300 plus carries, their efficiency starts to drop. Because they're seeing so many carries, they're getting tired. The defense is loading the box because they know how great of a running back that a guy like Nick Chubb is, but still very efficient. 13th in yards per touch, 4th in juke rate, and 6th in yards created last season. The big addition for Nick Chubb is going to be the fact that there was a subtraction in this offense of Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt being gone will add a lot more pass-catching upside to Nick Chubb's game, which could potentially elevate him to finishing first at his position at running back. So again, Tyreek, Bijan, Davante, Adams, and 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, I think any of these guys could finish number 1 at their position. Moving now to my 5th must-draft early round player, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. Composite ADP wide receiver 10 at pick number 19. Hilarious. Pick number 19 for the Sun God. This is a guy I have ranked ahead of guys like CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Some people have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked behind those guys. Wide receiver 7 last year in PPR, wide receiver 11 in PPR points per game. It is truly impressive what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done ever since breaking out in the 2021 NFL season, right at the end of the season. Amon-Ra is one of those guys that keeps receipts too. He talked about on Part of My Take, the Barstool podcast. Shout out to Barstool. Hopefully one day they hire me. But at the end of the day, no free ads for Barstool. Amon-Ra St. Brown keeps a list of all the wide receivers drafted ahead of him in his NFL draft class, which is hilarious because he wants to be the best, and he thinks he is the best out of that draft class. Wide receiver 7 in PPR, wide receiver 11 in PPR points per game. Now, to start off the season, this team's wide receiver core is absolutely atrocious. They are going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's amazing. And then Jameson Williams is suspended for gambling, so they're going to have Marvin Jones. They're going to have just a garbage cast of wide receivers, a ragtag group of wide receivers there. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to step up in a big way here. I think for the first couple of games, he could get 12 or 13 targets per game. 16 games played last year, 146 targets, 9.1 per game, ranking 8th. 106 receptions, 6.6 per game, number 5. 1,161 receiving yards, 72.6 per game, number 10. And 6 total touchdowns, 20th, with the 9th highest target accuracy, which just kind of nips in the butt the argument that Jared Goff sucks ass at being an NFL quarterback. 24th in dominator rating and 15th in true catch rate. You want to chase volume in fantasy football. I think there is the upside of Amon-Ra being a top 3 target at the wide receiver position this year. Again, to circle back, to further reiterate, the wide receiver core to start off the season for the first 6 games is bad. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, the corpse of Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, and Trinity Benson. Who the fuck is that guy? The only Benson I trust is Freddie Benson, the man who's behind the camera of iCarly. I am a huge fan of Amon-Ra. I'm a huge fan of this Detroit Lions offense, and I expect this Lions offense to shock all of the doubters that think this is just the old Lions offense. They're never going to be great. Well, you're wrong, because the Detroit Lions offense is going to be sick, like a fucking kickflip on a skateboard. I am a huge fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown this season. Moving to my 6th must-draft early round player, we got DeVonta Smith, wide receiver of the Fly Eagles Fly. Composite ADP wide receiver 12 at pick number 25. Last year, DeVonta was the wide receiver 9 in PPR and 14 in PPR points per game, tied with Mike Evans. 17 games played, despite the fact that he's the 1B in the offense behind AJ Brown. He had 136 targets, 8 per game, ranking 13th. He ranked 9th in receptions with 95, 5.6 per game, 8th in receiving yards with 1,196, 70.4 per game, and he had 7 total touchdowns, 14th at wide receiver. One of the best juke rates at wide receiver as well, 15.8%, ranking 3rd. This is an offense that you want players from. You want players on an offense that is as elite as the Philadelphia Eagles. Their offensive line is a brick fucking wall. Jalen Hurts has time to do his taxes behind the offensive line, and I know people like to shit on Jalen Hurts because he's not a great passer, he's a running back, this, that, and the other thing. We saw last season that Jalen Hurts he's got that quarterback in him. You know, they say they've got that dog in him. He's an actual quarterback. He can throw the ball. He can find DeVonta Smith deep down the field, and my favorite thing about DeVonta Smith, I get he's not going to be the most consistent player on your fantasy football roster. If you're looking for uber consistency at the beginning of the 3rd round, maybe you elect to go with T. Higgins instead. But DeVonta Smith has that crazy upside where the Eagles are just taking a deuce on the chest of their opponent, and DeVonta Smith has that upside to drop 25, 30 plus fantasy football points in any given game. And if something was to happen to AJ Brown, the upside, knock on wood, we're not rooting for injuries, obviously, but the untapped upside of DeVonta Smith, we could see him finish as a top 4 wide receiver, top 3 receiver, maybe even if AJ Brown got hurt. But again, I'm not rooting for that. I'm just saying, there'd be a lot more targets to go the way of DeVonta Smith. Moving now to player number 7, must-draft player number 7, Mark Andrews, tight end of the Baltimore Ravens, composite ADP, tight end 2 at pick number 28. Last year, it was the tight end 4 in PPR and the tight end 3 in PPR points per game, tied with T.J. Hockenson. 15 games played for Mark Andrews. Again, a lot of those without Lamar Jackson. He was 3rd in targets with 113, 3rd in receptions with 73, 3rd in receiving yards with 847, and 5 total touchdowns, ranking 8th, the 2nd most dominant tight end, 4th in yards per route run, and 2nd in yards per team pass attempt. I think if there was any tight end that was going to eclipse, leapfrog over Travis Kelce, it would be Mark Andrews. He is now in a Todd Monken offense. Todd Monken, however the fuck you say that guy's name. I know a lot of people in the comments, Nick, you say these guys' names wrong. Well, sorry, pal. I'm just an idiot. It happens all the time. I can never pronounce anyone's name correctly. But I really believe that with Todd Monken there in that offense, that is going to heavily utilize the tight end. Todd Monken loves the tight end more than I do, and everyone loves a nice tight end, you know. Shout out to Riley Reed. So Mark Andrews this season has the upside to have his best season yet. We've seen the crazy upside out of Mark Andrews, and I think if Lamar Jackson's able to stay healthy, he might be coming for that crown, Notorious Big style, and taking over as the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. He's obviously a freak of nature. He's built big. He's big. He's tall. And he is going to have a great season this year in Baltimore. And there's just something special about having one of those elite tight ends, right? You come out of your draft, and every single week, you're not sitting there like, holy shit, which tight end do I pick up? Which of these 2 tight ends I drafted should I play? Now, obviously, you can stream tight ends. You can pick them up off the waiver wire. You can just swap them in and out every single week. But it's a lot. There's a lot of peace you get, right? From going to sleep the night before the games. You go to bed on Saturday night. You're like, you know what? I got Mark Andrews, right? I got Mark Andrews on my team. I don't have to worry about my tight end shitting the bed. Whereas if you draft a tight end in like the 9th round, there's a chance that motherfucker puts up a goose egg, scores 0 points, right? That is basically impossible for Mark Andrews. And the biggest bonus is they added Odell Beckham Jr., which is going to take the defense's priority away from Mark Andrews in the red zone, right? In the red zone, normally you know the ball's going to Mark Andrews, or Lamar Jackson is going to jump over the offensive line and jam that thing in there. Now they got to worry about Odell as long as he can stay healthy, which will help out Mark Andrews. Before we pivot to must-draft early round player number 8, 9, and 10, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you don't know what Underdog Fantasy is, it's the best part, or the best place to play fantasy football, best ball this season. If you don't know what best ball is, that's where the part word comes. It's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, and no in-season management. At the end of every single week, Underdog puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. So if you ever struggle with starting the wrong receiver, right, you start the wrong flex all the time, well, Underdog fixes that because you don't have to set your lineup. They automatically throw the highest scores into the lineup for you. And the best part about this is now you can do hundreds of drafts, right? Because you don't have to worry about that in-season management. They have the biggest fantasy football contest ever, $25 to enter, Best Ball Mania 4, 150 max entries, $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. They're also going to have smaller tournaments as well. If you guys want to join more of like a league, they have sit and go games, which is just you versus 11 other people with as low of a buy-in as $3, and the first 2 places make money. It's like playing in your normal fantasy football league. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you click on the link in the video description or use promo code Notorious for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit 100, get additional 150, additional 50, 25, and additional 25. If you need any help, let me know down below in the comment section. And again, you guys checking them out helps me out a ton, and I love drafting on there, right? We did a 10-hour draft-a-palooza last Sunday on there. Moving now to player number 8, must-draft early round player number 8, Jahmyr Gibson. Jahmyr Gibbs, not Jahmyr Gibson, fucking Antonio Gibson. Jahmyr Gibbs. Everyone knows Gibby. Running back of the Detroit Lions, composite ADP, running back 14, pick 36. This guy played in Georgia Tech for the first 2 years of his collegiate career prior to joining the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2022, like his name was Forrest Gump. 12 games played in 2022 at 20 years old. 926 rushing yards on 151 rushes, 44 receptions for 444 yards, 4 for 4, like he was at Wendy's, with a 12.8% target share in that Alabama offense. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those running backs that has the upside to put your fantasy football team on its back in half PPR or full PPR. This is a guy that could see 80, 90 plus targets this season. Now, a little bit of his upside is capped by the fact that they brought in David Montgomery, and you know David Montgomery is getting that work on the goal line, right? He's going to lick his fingers, stick it in there, and go to town on the goal line. But Jahmyr Gibbs, in terms of just all over the field, he's going to be seeing a lot of touches. Again, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of options to throw the ball to this season, so I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a nice safety blanket for Mr. Jared Goff. 99th percentile 40-yard dash with a 4.36, which means that you throw the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs 3 yards away, he makes one cut, one defender lose his shoes, right? And he runs directly into the end zone, right? He has that incredible speed, 91st percentile speed score. Now, he's not the biggest guy on earth, 5'9", 199 pounds. We're close to the same height. I'm 5'10", shorter back, but the incredible speed makes him kind of like his former teammate, who wasn't actually teammates with him, DeAndre Swift, or Alvin Kamara. So very interesting player, huge upside in him again, shorter back, but incredibly fast. Moving now to must-draft player number 9, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, composite ADP wide receiver 16 at pick number 37. His last season was in 2021, where he only played in 5 games, so we're going to look back, get in the time machine here towards 2020 for a closer representation of what he could do on a full season. That season, when Julio Jones wasn't washed, when Julio Jones was still Julio Jones, wide receiver 5 in PPR, 4 in PPR points per game with Matty Ice Baby, dun 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 dun, under center. He was 7th in targets, 11th in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, and 9th in total touchdowns with 9. 7th in yards per out run, 9th in fantasy points per out run, 21st in target separation. Now, he did have a case of the butterfingers, right? You threw the ball to him, he dropped it a bunch, 9 drops at a 6.3% rate, but I expect that not to be the case in 2023. Now, I know people worry, Nick, don't you know Calvin Ridley's kind of old for how long he's been in the NFL? Don't you know that maybe he's going to be a little bit rusty? Aren't you worried about that, Nick? No, not worried at all. Don't think he's going to be rusty. Seen so many clips of him in training camp preseason. Doesn't look rusty. This is going to be a upper echelon, top of the charts, back in your heart offense in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence bouncing back after Urban Meyer brainwashed this guy into looking like a garbage tier quarterback. Doug the Pug Peterson as the quarterback. Big ups, not as the quarterback, as the head coach of the team. Calvin Ridley, to me, is the clear number 1 receiver on this team. Sure, they have Christian Kirk. Sure, they have Zay Jones. But Calvin Ridley is just a different species compared to those guys. He's just a different fucking animal. This guy makes Christian Kirk and Zay Jones look like JV football players. Just a couple of years ago, like entering into the 2021 NFL season, people were talking up Calvin Ridley like he might be one of the next best receivers in the NFL. And now he's coming off the board at wide receiver 16, pick 37. Take advantage of that. I think his ADP is going to keep moving up, but it feels like we're so close to draft season that it's not going to move anymore. It's not going to budge. And Calvin Ridley looks like a supreme pick that deep inside of fantasy football drafts. Again, it's not super deep, but I mean, I'd consider taking him in the 2nd round. So the fact that he goes at pick 37 is a little crazy. Final guy to talk about here, Justin Fields, quarterback of the Chicago Bears, composite ADP quarterback 7 at pick number 46. Now, I'll be honest with you. In a quarterback-heavy room, he goes in the 4th round, which is a little bit gross. I prefer to wait until the 5th round, but if I want Justin Fields like I want Justin Fields, I would be okay taking him at the end of the 4th round because of the offense. Offensive line, reinvented, reinvigorated, much better in 2023 compared to 2022. His wide receiver core, he gets DJ Moore, wiki, which is basically a complete and utter rehaul, right? Going from Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney to now having Monsieur DJ Moore in this offense, it's like night and day. He also has Cole Kmet on the offense, Robert Tonyan, Big Bob Tonyan at tight end. They have some solid running backs, Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman, at least for now, right? Seems like Donta Foreman might be a cut candidate. Roshan Johnson. Maybe they get JT. I don't think so, but you never know. So 15 games played last year for Justin Fields, quarterback 6, and quarterback 6 in points per game, tied with Lamar Jackson. Now, his passing stats weren't the best, but if you remember, there was like a switch flipped halfway through the season, right? Justin Fields literally looked like he couldn't read a defense worth shit. Then halfway into the year, when the offense started kind of molding around the game of Justin Fields, what Justin Fields does best, then we started to see things start ticking in his head. The hamster was running on the wheel at maximum capacity, and Justin Fields started feasting. 27th in pass attempts, 26th in passing yards, 16th in passing touchdowns, 10th in interceptions. But the kit caboodle, the big boy money is made here with the carries. 2nd in carries, 1st in rushing yards, and 2nd in rushing touchdowns. 4th in red zone accuracy, and 17th in QBR last season. Obviously, there's inherently more injury risk with a rushing quarterback compared to a guy who just stands like a statue in the pocket, but I'm not too worried about injuries when it comes to Justin Fields. Knock on wood, we don't root for injuries. I'm a huge fan of his talent, and I'm a huge fan of what I think the Chicago Bears offense is going to look like in 2023. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Make sure you hit that like button as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. And leave down below in the comment section who your #1 must-draft early round player is. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy!